All right, so today we're going to be diving into some seriously mind-blowing medical research.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I'm excited.
yeah, this is pretty wild stuff. We're talking
Right.
about the possibility of curing blindness
Wow.
with full eye transplants.
Like a whole
A
eye.
whole eye.
That's
I
incredible.
know it sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It really does. But you know what? It's closer than you might think.
That's what's so crazy about this. And a big part of the reason we're even talking about this today is because of this agency called ARPA-H,
Yeah, ARP.
Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health.
It's like they're the ones who take on these like Mission Impossible type medical projects.
Yeah, it's kind of like the medical version of putting a man on the moon.
Exactly.
Like those big, huge goals that just seem impossible.
Yeah.
And they've decided that restoring vision is their next giant leap.
Yep. And they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're actually backing 4 different teams across the U.S., all working on this.
Oh, wow. So it's not just one team. It's like a whole...
It's like a whole science Olympics going on.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. It's like a scientific race to restore sight.
Exactly. And the cool thing is each team has a slightly different approach.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's not just like everyone's doing the same thing. It's like they're all coming at it from different angles.
Yeah, they're all collaborating, but they're also competing in a way.
So what are some of the big, like, hurdles that they have to overcome with this?
Yeah.
Because it just seems so complex.
Oh, it is. So first of all, even removing and preserving the donor eye, that's a huge challenge in itself.
Really? Just that part?
Oh, yeah, because you got to keep that eye viable for transplantation.
Right. It can't.
It can't just die.
Yeah, it's got to be healthy.
Exactly. And so there's this team at the University of Miami led by Dr. Pelaez. They're actually working on a special life support machine.
What? A life support machine for an eye.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's pretty wild. But that's how delicate this whole process is.
So that's just step one. But then even if you have like a perfectly healthy donor, eye isn't the optic nerve, like the real key to all of this.
You hit the nail on the head. The optic nerve is the biggest challenge. It's that connection between the eye and the brain. And if it's damaged, you know...
That's what causes blindness in a lot of cases.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
You can transplant the eye, but if that connection isn't there...
You're not going to see.
You're not going to see. There was actually a case back in November at NYU.
Oh, yeah.
They did a partial face transplant, and it involved an eye transplant.
Right.
It was groundbreaking surgery, but it didn't restore the patient's vision.
Oh, wow. So that's a good example.
It just goes to show how complicated this is.
You can do the transplant, but getting that vision back is a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely.
So how are these ARPA-H teams approaching this optic nerve problem?
Well, like I said, each team is coming at it from a different angle.
Okay.
So one team that's doing some really interesting work is led by Dr. Kia Washington at CU Anschutz. And they've actually already successfully done eye transplants in rats.
Really?
Yeah, they've got the transplant part down pat.
Wow.
Now they're working on scaling it up to larger animals.
Okay.
And they're exploring all these different optic nerve regenerative strategies.
Well, they're trying to figure out how to actually get that vision back online.
Exactly.
So what are some of those regenerative strategies? Are we talking like stem cells or gene therapy or...
All of the above. It's pretty cutting edge stuff. They're being a little secretive about the specifics right now.
Right, of course.
But they're definitely using some very advanced techniques.
So like what kind of stuff can you tell us about?
Well, one really interesting area is bioengineering.
Okay.
So basically, they're using biological materials to repair or replace damaged tissues.
Oh, wow.
So imagine using a 3D printed scaffold.
Wait, hold on. 3D printing a solution for blindness.
Yeah. It sounds crazy, right?
That's wild. So how does that even work?
So they're not printing an entire optic nerve, but they're using 3D printing to create this framework, a scaffold that mimics the structure of the optic nerve.
Oh, so it's like a blueprint.
Exactly. And then they seed that scaffold with stem cells.
Oh, wow.
And the idea is that the stem cells will grow and differentiate into the specific cell types needed for the nerve to function.
So they're basically building a roadmap for the stem cells to follow.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like they're guiding the regrowth of the optic nerve.
That's incredible. And what about this other team, Ingle Therapeutics? You mentioned they're using 3D printing and stem cells too.
Yeah, they are, but they're focusing on a slightly different aspect.
Okay.
So Ingle Therapeutics is a Harvard spinoff,
Okay.
and they're using 3D printing to create this customized hydrogel.
Okay.
And this hydrogel is designed to promote nerve cell growth and survival.
Oh, so it's not just about the structure, it's about creating the right environment.
Exactly. It's like creating the perfect soil for a plant to grow in, but for nerve
Oh,
cells.
that's a great analogy.
So they inject this hydrogel near the damaged optic nerve, and it provides this supportive environment for the stem cells to do their thing.
So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach.
Yeah,
You need the structure and you need the right environment.
precisely.
This is all so fascinating.
Hmm.
But even with all this amazing technology, isn't there still the risk of the body rejecting the transplanted eye?
That's another big hurdle they have to overcome. It's called immunosuppression.
Right, because the body's immune system is usually pretty good at spotting foreign objects and attacking them.
Exactly.
So how do they stop the body from rejecting this brand new eye?
Well, the CU Anschutz team, the same one that's doing the rat transplants,
Yeah.
they're also doing a lot of research on immunosuppression.
Okay.
They're exploring new ways to manage the immune response.
So trying to find that balance.
Yeah, trying to prevent rejection with completely shutting down the immune system.
Right, because you don't want to make the person vulnerable to other infections.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
So it's like a three-pronged challenge.
Yeah.
You got to get you got to regenerate the optic nerve, and you got to make sure the body accepts it.
That's it in a nutshell.
Wow. It sounds incredibly complex.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Yeah, because if they can pull this off,
It could revolutionize treatment for blindness.
think about how many people that could help.
Millions of people around the world.
It's a game changer.
Absolutely.
But it's really interesting to me is that this research could go even beyond just restoring sight.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really exciting.
You mentioned earlier that it could have implications for other neurological conditions.
Yes. Because what we learn about regenerating the optic nerve,
Yeah.
it could potentially be applied to other parts of the nervous system.
Oh, wow. So this could be like a key to unlocking all sorts of...
Exactly. Think spinal cord injuries,
Oh, wow.
Parkinson's disease, even hearing loss.
Wait, hearing loss, too. How does that tie into eye transplants?
Well, it all comes down to understanding how to regenerate nerves. The optic nerve is part of the central nervous system,
Right.
just like the nerves that control hearing.
Oh, I see.
So if we can figure out how to regenerate the optic nerve...
It could open up pathways to repairing other damaged nerves.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect.
So it's not just about giving people back their sight.
It's about unlocking this whole new understanding of how to heal the nervous system.
That's mind-blowing.
And who knows what other unexpected discoveries might come out of this research.
Yeah, it's like this ripple effect.
Exactly. It could have implications for all sorts of medical fields.
Wow. This has been an amazing deep dive so far. It's incredible to think that we might actually be on the verge of conquering blindness.
I know. It's really inspiring.
Something that has affected humans for, all of history.
It really speaks to the power of human ingenuity.
Absolutely, and the dedication of these researchers.
Yeah, they're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And it feels like we're witnessing a medical moonshot in action.
It really does. And while it's still early days, the progress they're making is remarkable.
It's definitely giving me a lot of hope for the future of medicine.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be alive.
I agree.
Yeah, it really is an exciting time for this kind of research. And like you said, it's still early, but the fact that they're tackling this from so many different angles,
Yeah.
it really increases the odds of success.
That's what I think is so cool about this whole ARPA-H thing.
Yeah.
It's not just like one team with one approach. It's like they've assembled this all-star team of scientists.
Yeah, it's like the Avengers of vision research.
Wow. Each with their own superpower.
Exactly, and they're all working towards this common goal.
And each team's research kind of builds on the others.
Absolutely, it's like a synergistic effect.
So like while Dr. Washington's team is doing those rat transplants and moving on to bigger animals, Dr. Pelea's team is focused on that first critical step.
Yeah, preserving the donor eye.
Because if you don't have a viable eye to begin with,
It's game over.
right? It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand.
Exactly. So Dr. Pelea's team has developed this really amazing life support system.
Oh yeah, I was reading about that.
Yeah, it's specifically designed for donor eyes.
So it's like a little mini ICU just for the eye.
Pretty much. It keeps the eye oxygenated and nourished, mimicking the conditions inside the body.
So it basically tricks the eye into thinking it's still alive.
Yeah, exactly. And that allows it to stay viable for a longer period of time.
So that gives them more time to transport it and prepare it for the transplant.
Exactly. It's a game changer.
Wow. So we've been talking a lot about the biological side of things, like with the stem cells and the bioengineering.
Right.
But you mentioned that One team is taking a more technological approach with bioelectronics.
Oh, yeah, that's a really fascinating area of research.
Can you explain that a little more? What does that even mean?
Sure. So basically, they're exploring the idea of using these tiny little implantable devices
Okay.
to stimulate the optic nerve.
So instead of regenerating the nerve itself, they're kind of bypassing the damaged parts.
Exactly, like creating an alternate route for the signals to travel.
It's like building a detour around a roadblock.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So these bioelectronic devices, they're often called neural prosthetics.
Yeah.
They use these microelectrodes to stimulate specific nerve cells.
Oh.
But the challenge is that the nervous system speaks this really complex language.
Right.
So you have to figure out how to translate visual input into electrical signals that the brain can understand.
So it's not just about zapping the nerve with electricity.
No, it's much more nuanced than that.
You have to speak the language of the brain.
Exactly. It's like learning Morse code.
But for the brain?
Yeah, for the brain.
That's so cool. But is there any evidence that this could actually work?
Well, there have been some promising results with other types of neural prosthetics.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, cochlear implants for hearing loss,
Oh, yeah.
they use similar principles to stimulate the auditory nerve,
Oh, wow.
and they've been incredibly successful.
So that gives you hope that maybe stimulating the optic nerve could work too.
Exactly. It's still early days, but it's definitely a promising avenue of research.
So we've got all these different approaches, biological regeneration, bioengineering, bioelectronics. It makes you wonder, are they all going to be successful?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Medical research is always a bit of a gamble.
Right, there are no guarantees.
Exactly. There are always risks and setbacks.
But that's how science works, right?
It's all about trial and error, pushing the boundaries and seeing what works.
So even if some of these approaches don't pan out,
The knowledge gained along the way is still incredibly valuable.
it's like you learn something from every experiment, whether it's a success or a failure.
Exactly. And that knowledge can lead to new discoveries down the road.
Yeah, it's like each step takes us closer to a solution, even if it's not the solution we initially set out to find.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about the journey.
So who knows, maybe one day, thanks to the work of all these researchers, blindness will be a thing of the past.
That's the dream. And I have to say, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
The progress they're making is really inspiring.
It feels like we're on the cusp of something truly revolutionary.
It really does. It's an exciting time to be following this research.
Yeah, it's like we're getting a front row seat to a medical revelation.
Exactly.
But even with all this amazing science, we can't ignore the real-world challenges.
Absolutely. There's a lot more to it than just the science.
Like, how do you actually translate these breakthroughs into treatments that are accessible to everyone?
Right. That's a huge question.
So what are some of those practical considerations that we need to be thinking about? I mean, for starters, we've talked about how complex this procedure is.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't like, getting your tonsils out.
Right. This is major surgery.
Yeah, it requires like incredibly specialized skills and equipment.
Yeah, you're going to need some serious surgical chops for this.
Exactly. So not every hospital is going to be able to handle this kind of transplant.
Definitely not. At least not initially.
So even if the science is there,
The access could be very limited.
yeah, because you need the right surgeons and the right facilities.
And the right equipment.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then there's the issue of donor eyes.
Oh, right, because you can't do an eye transplant without an eye.
You need a healthy eye to transplant. And we're already facing a shortage of donor organs in general.
Right, there's so many people on waiting lists.
Exactly. So finding enough donor eyes to meet the demand if this procedure takes off.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a challenge for sure.
And it's not like we can just grow eyes in a lab.
Not yet, anyway.
So we're totally reliant on donors.
And their families.
Yeah, and that brings up a whole other set of ethical questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if there aren't enough eyes to go around,
Yeah, how do you decide who gets priority?
that's a tough one.
It's a really complex issue. You've got medical urgency, the potential for success, fairness, equity.
So many factors to consider.
It's a conversation that society will need to have.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the money.
Oh, yeah, the financial side of things.
This is like super cutting-edge experimental surgery.
It's not going to be cheap.
Not at first, anyway.
You've got the cost of the research, the specialized equipment, the training for the surgeons,
So it could be really expensive.
especially in the beginning.
And that means that even if it works,
A lot of people might not be able to afford it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the unfortunate reality.
It's something we definitely need to be thinking about.
So we've got the complexity of the procedure,
Yeah.
the shortage of donor eyes,
Yeah.
the ethical considerations, and then the financial hurdle.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But even with all of that,
It's still incredible to think that this is even a possibility.
yeah, I mean, even having this conversation about eye transplants is pretty amazing.
It really is. It
Uh,
speaks to how far we've come in medical science.
And the ingenuity of these researchers.
Absolutely. They're really pushing the boundaries.
And it gives me hope for the future.
Me too. While there are challenges,
Yeah.
the progress is undeniable.
It really feels like we're on the verge of a new era in medicine.
And who knows what other seemingly impossible breakthroughs might be next.
Right. I mean, maybe one day we'll be talking about regenerating limbs or curing Alzheimer's
The
or...
reversing aging.
Yeah. It's an exciting future to imagine.
It's a future that's driven by scientific curiosity and the desire to improve human lives.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of eye transplants and the quest to cure blindness.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really highlights the power of human innovation and the potential of science to transform our lives.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to stay curious and keep exploring.
The future of medicine is bright and full of possibilities.
And who knows what groundbreaking discoveries we'll be discussing on our next deep dive.
Until then, keep questioning and never stop wondering.